You are listening to the CAD podcast. This is the place where computer-aided design and drafting meets humor and practicality, with a touch of business acumen thrown in for fun. Jim and Rocco, the owners of Zentek Consultants, the premier U.S. technology consulting firm for architecture, engineering, construction, and manufacturing, discuss the fascinating world of CAD with some humor and some honesty. The CAD podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the CAD podcast with Jim and Rocco from Zentek Consultant. I am Jim, your obnoxiously loud host, and with me, as always, is my co-host and partner,
the brilliant one, Rocco. I'm going to roll with that one, Jim.
You're going to go with the brilliant one on a daily basis? I like it.
I think so.
It gives me a good target to launch at. Not a problem. Believe me. You enjoy it for today. Next podcast, I'll shoot you down. So, I'm going to be nice because today we actually have an old friend back on the show. Tony Gaffney from Pinnacle Consulting has agreed to come back and be tortured by us yet again. So, Tony, thanks so much for being here today, man.
No, thank you, guys. It's always good to check in and catch up with you guys and, go over stuff. It's good. It's always fun.
Good. So, I've known, and Rocco and I both really, we've known and we worked with Tony for many years now. I'm not going to say how many because we're all three of us getting too old. But Tony's he's a veteran CAD consultant, a designer, and really hands down just one of the best instructors that I've ever seen. Plus he's just a lot of fun to talk with. So we always love having Tony getting on here. So Tony, before we do get into today's topic, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about your CAD and design background and what exactly you do over at Pinnacle?
Yeah, we're a consulting group, so I've been, as you mentioned, Jim, I've been doing this since we don't want to say how long. It's been quite a while. And the majority of what we do is we provide support for AutoCAD. I'm mostly more of on the civil side, so a lot of civil 3D support. And we do everything. We'll come in and help you get your work done. We also deal with standardizations, customizations, trying to get your CAD standards established. So we're seeing a lot of that lately. I do pretty much most of what I do these days is that. Mm-hmm. And then also training and instruction. And that's kind of I think where you wanted to go today. That's a big part of what at least I've been doing right now over at Pinnacle. And we've been kicking around for quite a while.
Yeah, nice. So what Tony alluded to is today's topic, right? And today's topic, which was actually suggested by Tony, and I love the title he gave me, it's called Nobody Knows How to CAD Anymore, which I think is a great title. And today's topic is being brought to you by grumpy old men like Tony and I. So, we've built our careers around the CAD world. And, we take a lot of pride in what we do and in generating very clear, concise, professional construction and manufacturing documentation. And I happen to think that is a good thing, right? Everybody should take pride in their profession, whatever your profession is, and you should always try to put out the best product possible. I think, though, that, over the last decade or so, I have seen a distinct drop-off in the quality of the CAD files that come across my screen, and I have listened to a lot of other people complain about the lack of detail and consistency in the construction documentation that they get. Now, to be fair, all right, I freely admit this is always the perception for every generation as we get older, no matter what the industry is, right? We all tend to believe that we did it better when we were young, and that these upstart kids coming up behind us, they're too sloppy and too lazy to do their work properly. And I really do not believe that's the case. It is not a generational or an age issue, but I think there's been a dramatic change in the way that drawings are developed and output, and that hasn't been at all good for the design build industry kind of as a whole. And I want to see today if we can figure out why and maybe throw out some ideas on how to correct things. So, Tony, you're really the guy who still works real heavily up on the front lines of drafting and design, more so than I do. Are you seeing a change in the quality of CAD documentation or a drop in the professionalism of our output, like as an industry?
Yeah, I mean, just to, I want to reiterate the grumpy old man concept that you just talked about, and this is, what brought this up is the conversations that have been occurring recently. And part of it is what you talked about. It's just that, the presentation of the drawing, the finished product, shall we say. And it's not just us old grumpy old men, Jim. I'm talking to, project managers who are younger than us, even, assistant project managers, people who, for the most part are looking at the drawings and seeing it, and it's just, yeah, you're right. The quality's gone down, and I think it's mostly from experience. I think a lot of it has to do with, the next generation coming up doesn't know what it's supposed to look like. And I think we might have talked about this in the last time I was on. There's a generational thing happening here where the people who knew how to draft on the boards are gone, and they knew what things were supposed to look like. Then the next generation that came up with CAD, they maybe spent a little bit of time on the boards, but they learned from that first generation what things were supposed to look like. Now I feel like we're coming into the third generation, and this generation, they have no idea. They never spent any time on the boards. They've never seen a plan or a sheet that was hand drafted. They don't know what it's supposed to look like. And I think that is what's happening now. It's not, CAD skills, obviously you can train them, but guys, what's it supposed to look like? Look at your finished product. And when I do a lot of training, I have to bring this up, but I have to, enforce this. Like, guys, as soon as you can, and gals, sorry, look at what you're gonna present to your engineer that's reviewing it. Think about what that looks like. And a lot of times in the process of, and you guys, sometimes it's just, is the drawing set to a correct scale? Does it look good at that scale? Would it be better if it was a 30 scale? Would it be better as a 20 scale? These are the kind of things that if you're hand drafting, these questions get answered right away because you're grabbing a piece of paper and then first question, what are we drawing? What scale are we drawing this to? Now with CAD, that doesn't even come into play, and I think the younger generation kids don't, like, that concept isn't there from the get-go, and that has to be learned. So it's now cut to the point where we got to teach them the software, but then we also have to teach them how to draft.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You wind up with a lot of
like I said, it's not just us grumpy old men, Jim, coming up with this conversation. I have this conversation with a lot of people at all different levels of drafting and design and management.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, I think you're absolutely hit the perfect thing, right? I think a lot of people depend on the computer. Right? I push the big red easy button, and the computer generates the drawing. And it must be right because the computer did it.
Auto means automatic, right?
Yeah, that's what it means. Yeah, and that's not the way it goes, right? Yeah, knowing what you're trying to communicate and making sure that the things you're putting out there for building are clearly understood. That's 90% of the job, man. So, yeah, I agree with you 100%. So this is a really important topic, to my mind. And like I said, I have always taken a lot of pride in being in this industry and the projects that I've worked on over the years. And the thing here is it's not just about pride. It's also an issue of constructability and profit, right? For those of you who are listening who think that, Tony and I are just boomers yelling at the kids for standing on our lawn, there's some business sense behind this too. The truth is a CAD output that's accurate and readable and easily understood is vital to the construction process. If your drawings are hard to read or at the wrong scale, or if all the lines are indistinguishable from each other, right? If your text is too big or too small, or if your callouts are missing or they point to the wrong details and the wrong data, it makes it damn near impossible for the builders to do their jobs, right? And that means slower project completion, delays, conflicts, right? Constant stream of RFIs, right? All of that adds up to lost profit for everybody involved. All right. So Tony, where do you see the biggest issue with the CAD files today? I mean, is it just in the way they look and read, or is it inaccurate content, or is it a little bit of both?
A little bit of everything you just said. To your point about text sizes, you'll get drawings. I've had project managers come in and go, hey, look at this drawing we got from this intern. Now listen, they're an intern, they're still learning, but I'm just using this as an example to bring up the point. And like text sizes are all over the place.
Yeah.
And I don't think they pick up on it in the computer, because in the computer it looks okay. And once you put it on paper, come on, that's the truth. That's where the rubber hits the road. And in a reviewer, and I'm not even talking about the person you're submitting it to, I'm talking about the engineer that you're working for. He's going to look at that and he's going to say, this height, this text is this font, this text is this height. It looks like it's a mess. And to your point, you can't make sense of the drawing. And it has to be clear. It has to be legible. It has to make sense. You don't want people looking at a drawing and the first thing off their minds is, well, this is a mess. This looks like crap. Mm-hmm. This is disjointed. They want to look at the design and realize, okay, well, maybe that invert's wrong or this is that. That the content of it. That's what they want to focus on. You don't want them to be distracted with a drawing that doesn't look cohesive. And this is the kind of stuff that this is what I'm starting to have to add into the lesson plans and into the instruction.
It's
guys,
important.
Look, this is what it's supposed to look like. It's you learned the dimension command. Great. And you created a dimension and you learned how to do it. But are you dimensioning correctly? Are you over dimensioning? Are you under dimensioning? Can we build it from your drawing?
Right.
That's kind of what's happening now.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. For anybody who's listening who think that Tony and I are just nitpicking, it's like, oh, does it matter if the text is a little bit bigger? Yes, it really does, because the reality of when you look at a construction document, the bigger the text is, the more important that is. That's the industry standard. You make it a little larger so that it stands out more, because that's what you want people to focus on. You make your lines a little thicker and a little darker because on this drawing, that's the important information. And if you've got that wrong and things are mixed, you got people focused on the wrong things, and they're building and focusing and designing to the wrong standard. Right? So it is a very important thing.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of a general example in the civil world, it's not set in stone, but usually if it's existing, the annotation is italicized.
Right.
And if it's proposed, it's not italicized, and like you said, Jim, it might be a little bit bold. That makes the plan very legible. I can look at a drawing that's set up their way, and I can realize, oh, that's an existing feature. That's a proposed feature. And there's no question about it. If things are mixed up because the drafter doesn't understand these concepts or wasn't shown how to do these concepts, then we'll go back to what you said earlier. What's going on here? Now we're wasting time trying to decipher.
Yeah, absolutely. So Rocco, we do just an absolute ton of CAD training here at Zentech, right? When you're talking to the clients about training, are they more focused on getting better output, like we're talking about, or they just want, teach the people how to use the CAD tools?
Yeah, I think it comes down to teach the people how to use the CAD tools, and it's a really interesting discussion, but I don't think that this is so much a problem within our industry, guys. I mean, I think it's, and Jim, you're going to get to this a little bit later on, but I think it's about, just speed and getting it done, and for the sake of getting it done, because we have so much work, I think it comes down, the important part is really a proper level of training that really needs to be considered here. Take a step back and slow down and train people properly. It's interesting because I think it extends beyond our industry, right? I think it's across the board in multiple industries. I mean, to give you guys an example, like my wife is in the finance industry, and she was telling me the other week, someone that she works with, a colleague of hers, is extremely detailed. She's very good at what she does. The girl ended up making a $70,000 error, a $70,000 trading error. It cost the company $70,000. And the core reason behind it is because she wasn't fully trained from the beginning as to the theory behind it, as to how the processes all work. She was kind of like thrown into the mix and just taught the short-term answer, the short-term method for getting something done, but she didn't fully understand the whole theory behind why she's doing what she's doing. And so I think it's, again, it's not just about the short term. It's a broader approach, and training is key.
Yeah, and I think you boiled it down nicely, right? It really comes down, no matter where you are, what industry you're in, it's about training people on the why, not just the how. I think that's a great point. That's where we really need to focus. So, and I really do believe that training with an eye towards better output in our industry is a key. Right? Software tools and features are great, but if they're not properly formatted and applied with the intent of accurately conveying design information, what's the point, right? We get a lot of praise, here, from our clients here at Zentech on the classes that we teach, because that's always one of the primary focuses when we teach. And it's actually something that I picked up from the guy who was the instructor for the very first formal CAD training classes I ever had many, many years ago. And it was taught by some guy named Tony Gaffney, if I remember correctly.
You're too kind.
Hey, man, look, Tony beat it into the students during the classes, man. It didn't matter how fast you got something done if nobody understood what the drawing said when you were finished, right? And I took that to heart. And I think it's really important that everybody remember that. So Tony, do you think the industry as a whole has made the mistake of prioritizing speed over process over understandable output, right? Or we focus too much on faster tools and not on better plans?
A little bit. I want to use the word mistake, but just to reiterate what you said, the reason I pounded that into your head, Jim, and I learned that from teaching students, older students who knew how to hand draft. And then I would also in the same class have these young kids who never were on the board.
Right.
And it would take the older guy, 3-4 times as long to produce the drawing exercise, whatever we were using. And the kids ripped it out because they're kids. The synapses work better than ours and just ripped it out. But every time, Jim, the older guy's drawing looks better. And I would use that as an example. And guys, look, it took him longer, but I want that drawing. I don't want yours. This is what you need to do. And it's funny because I was at a client and they were cleaning up all their old Mylars and all their old hand-drafted, surveys and things like that, small stuff, 8.5 by 11s. And I grabbed a bunch of them because I'm going to use them in class. And I go, look, people, this is what it's supposed to look like.
Yeah.
If you can reproduce this in CAD, you're golden. And because these kids don't know what this stuff looks like. It's a piece of Mylar and it's pencil laid on top of the Mylar and it's beautiful and it's clean and it makes total sense. There is no wasted time trying to decipher, text types like we talked about earlier. You're looking at the drawing, you can see the plan, you can see this, you can see that. It's like I want to frame these things.
Yeah.
And we need to get back to that. And I think that, I don't want to use the word mistake. It's almost like something that's been lost, and we got to find out a way to get that back. And I think part of it is, and I tell all the kids I deal with coming out of engineering school, I go, are they teaching you CAD at school? And the majority of the answer is no. Oh, we had a semester, and, the first semester we learned a little AutoCAD, or I'm using SolidWorks or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why are you learning SolidWorks if you're in the civil industry, or you're in the architectural industry? So I think there's a little fault. I don't want to say fault, but that's the spot where things should be addressed. And I always say, just bring back the internships. Get these kids in here at the same time they're going to school, and they're going to learn, they're going to learn the job on the job, and they're going to learn all the theory stuff back in class. But it's interesting that this is now coming up, and I think that's the reason is, I mentioned the generation gap, but people, you said yourself, you can get the tools, you can learn the software, but what are you doing with it? What are you producing?
That's it. It's all about what you put out in the end. All right. So let's take a quick break to hear from today's sponsor. But when we come back, I want to get into the why of this topic, right? And get Tony's input on the best way to hopefully fix some of these issues. All right? So stand by, folks. We will be back in just a minute with more of the Cattle Call Podcast. Hey everybody, this is Jim and Rocco with Zentech Consultants, and we wanted to talk to you a little bit today about the training options that we have available here for you guys at Zentech Consultants. We offer public training classes as well as private custom courses for all of your software and design needs. So, Rocco, why don't you tell the folks what kind of training we offer and how do they reach out to us to get it going for them?
Yeah, Jim, we cover everything from Bluebeam to Autodesk to Microsoft to BricsCAD. to civil site design training and beginner through to advanced level topics. Like you said, both public and private courses. If you got a group and want to run a class specifically for your team, we can help you. So just feel free to hit our website. We're at zentechconsultants.net. That's ZENTEK, or you can give us a ring, 866-824-4459, or even drop us an email, sales@zentechconsultants.net.
There you go, Zentech Consultants for all of your technology training need. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Cattle Call podcast, where we're talking with Tony Gaffney of Pinnacle Consulting about the lack of quality output in many modern CAD files. And Rocco's dropping things in the background, making noise. Shame on you.
That wasn't me.
Oh, it was Tony. I see. All right. So yeah, I really want to start off here in this half on getting into the kind of the why of this problem, right? Like I said in the first half, I don't believe that it's an age or a generational thing and that kids today are lazy and don't want to work or any of that crap. I truly believe that the problem is one of, essentially corporate greed and attempts to increase profit at the cost of quality. And I think that the design build world has kind of fallen victim to a process that's known as McDonaldization. All right, and it's the attempt to homogenize, standardize, and automate all processes based on the highest profitability potentials. And it's become the backbone of modern American business. So, thank you, Ray Kroc, for that. Now, I'll tell you that I hate this process in general. I think it's terrible for our society as it sacrifices workers in favor of profits. But I'll also say that it's more dangerous in the design build industry than most others. We're not creating the same product the same way. We're not flipping burgers here, right? We're not doing the same thing time after time after time. And when you put processes in place that are purely automation and speed based, they don't adapt well to the variant designs, and you get really unpredictable and sometimes just flat out unusable output on your jobs. So, Tony, you do a lot of work for different clients, right? Different types of clients at Pinnacle. Do you see the corporate demand for this increased production and profit overwhelming the need for reliable CAD output?
Yeah, to an extent. I always see it as a situation where corporate doesn't fully understand, what the process is. They remember, they see it as an expense. They don't see it as a a necessary part in the whole design process. And as we talked about earlier, it's where the rubber meets the road. This is the plans that are being produced. These are designs that are going to go out and be looked at and be approved or not approved.
And you know what always throws me about that? I'm sorry to just cut you off. It boggles my mind. Yeah. This is your product. If you're an engineering architectural design firm, this is your product. Right? It's like McDonald's or one of these places going, we don't care if the burgers are bad. We don't care if the burgers taste terrible. But that's your product.
No, that's obvious.
Yeah, well, actually, that was a bad example. You're right. Those are awful hamburgers.
No, it's a good example. It's a great example.
It's what that McDonaldization leads to.
Yeah, come on. The only reason you eat the junk food is because you're starving, and in 5 minutes you're going to have something to eat. But every time you eat it, you feel like crap after you eat it.
Yes.
It's convenience. You said it yourself. It's convenience. It's quick. Just bang it out, get it done. But what are we doing? And I think you said it also. Rocky, you mentioned it's overall. It's not just our industries, other industries. It's just I don't know. Sometimes it's just like, all right, everybody, hit the brakes, slow down, take a little more time, be a little bit more careful. Look at what you're doing. Look at the design. But no, in this world, it's go, 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 go. I see it from the survey level up through the design level, everything. And I think I always thought, hand drafting, going back to that concept, there's a lot of iterations that occur in the design process. And I think back in those days, you did not see every iteration become actualized because the guy drafting it is like, all right, I'll change that when I get to that portion of it. And in that process, it's like, oh, remember that thing I told you about? Yeah, now we're going to change it to something else. So, okay, great. I never got there, so there we go. I'll make it what it is. So it's like the napkin, shall we say, does not show every iteration of the design process, but with CAD, every iteration is created.
Yeah.
And because of the speed of it. And that's where I think, like you said, everything's just sped up. And the quality is not. And you said it yourself. I mean, the construction guys, they complain they haven't had a good-looking drawing in like 10 years. I mean, I see some stuff. I shudder when I look at it. Like, what is going on here? This is crazy. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And part of it, as we discussed, is people not knowing the software. That's, I'll give you that. I'll grant you that. That's fine. You don't know the software. You didn't learn correctly. Or maybe you have some bad habits. That's okay. But now the new thing that's coming up is, okay, you know the software, but you don't know what it's supposed to look like. You don't know what a good drawing, quality drawing looks like. And I'm afraid that really comes through practice, That's the only way to learn it is to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. So, look, folks, you who are listening, don't get me wrong, right? You guys know I'm a small business owner, and I'm a capitalist to my core. I want the big profits as much as the next guy. Someday I hope I might get to be as wealthy as Rocco is, because he takes all my profits. The problem here, I think, is that when we shortcut the professionalism of our construction documents, we're actually losing profit in the long term. Even when the short-term analysis of getting the design job done and out the door seems to say otherwise. If it goes out in this state, you're looking at overruns, back charges, RFIs, and even lawsuits that are really expensive. Yep. And that will be the result of your poor output. And that will kill any and all savings, right, you get with these kind of mindless speed increases, right? Not just that, but the reality of it is, right, that you're running the risk of hurting people, believe it or not. Think about this, right? Like I said earlier, we're not making hamburgers in this industry. We're building infrastructure, airports, and skyscrapers that hold millions of people every year, right? A mislabeled bolt size or a support that looks like an existing item instead of a new one that needs to be put in place can quite literally kill people. I used to work with a structural engineer who was a brilliant guy, and he always said that engineers should be more respected by the public than doctors are. And whenever everybody go, what? And they'd ask him, why do you think that? He'd say, look, when a doctor makes a mistake, somebody dies. And that's sad. When an engineer makes a mistake, thousands of people die, and that's tragic. Right? So I always had a hard time arguing with him on that. So Tony, in terms of the output issues that you see, do you find that they're mainly bad display that makes the file hard to understand, or is it you said, is it lack of fundamental design information?
First, it's as we said, it's the appearance. Right away, that just stands out. If you look at a drawing and it's just jointed and it's a mess, and textiles and scales are just all over the place, that it just becomes difficult to read. And okay, so what are we talking about here? We're talking about your drafting here. We're not talking about the design that's on the piece of paper. We need to be talking about the design that's on the paper. We're wasting time because the drafting isn't up to par.
Right.
So that right there is a bottleneck, and that causes, as you said, that causes trouble, that causes expenses, redos, and you just feel like you're just treading water. You're wasting time. You're going over the same thing over and over again. And then obviously, with because the program is much more design specific, real true drafting is dead in a sense. Even from a CAD perspective, everything is designed now, at least in the civil world.
Yeah, but you can adapt.
Yeah, then now you're taking those same, I don't want to say mistakes, but those same shortcomings are now being applied to a much more sophisticated program. So now it's the overlook that you're doing is now affecting the design content. Now we're in trouble.
Right.
Now we're in trouble. And you mentioned earlier, you said lawsuits, stuff like that. I mean, nothing's worse when you get out there and you get onto construction and all of a sudden let's put it this way. I worked with this engineer. He said, the best jobs are the ones that never get built.
There you go, because
there's no problems with those. All of a sudden, now we have to actually make it work, and now we're going to see all the design flaws and all the design mistakes because now they're building it.
Yeah.
And And it's just, as you said, it's overruns and there's, costs and it's,
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point. So Rocco, where do you find that the industry kind of stands on this? I mean, do you see that they're concerned about or even aware of the issues we're talking about here today, or does it never even come up in conversations?
It doesn't come up in a lot of my conversations, but I think people realize it on the back end, right? Oh shoot, oh now look what happened. Now we got to go back and fix all these problems, And I don't think it comes down to, like I said, to a point of not caring. I think people do care about their jobs. It just comes down to learning the proper methods from the very beginning to avoid these kinds of issues and expenses. A lot of times a lot of times people look at the short-term approach. Well, we got to get it done. Well, that's great, but what is it going to cost you when there's big mistakes that are made?
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, look, I mean, all of our listeners know at this point, right, that I am just an absolute huge fan of automation and standards and efficiency, right? I'm not saying that optimizing your workflow in the CAD world is a bad thing. I live for that, right? A huge amount of my work here at Zentech is helping design firms develop and improve their CAD standards and workflows. But the key factor here, I think, is that the standards need to always be focused on generating reliable, professional, readable output. Yes, you want to do that as quickly and as efficiently as you can, but you can't let that speed overwhelm the final product we're putting out. There's a balance to be struck, I think. Good standards can generate perfect output, right? Assuming you plan it carefully and take the time to properly train your staff on more than just, which buttons to click to get a certain tool to work, right? There needs to be a quality control process put in place that needs to be run against your standards when they're first set up, okay, to test them, and then again on every single project you do. Right? You can't just assume that your standards work in every instant and just bulk process your jobs without anybody doing the quality assurance before they go out the door and then expect to get good results from that. To my mind, this is actually the primary duty of your CAD managers. Right? They are not, despite what a lot of people seem to think, they're not just there to answer CAD problems and draw faster than anybody else. They're really meant to be your design and drafting safety net. When I worked back in CAD management, I had standing orders for my staff that no matter how much the engineers begged or yelled, no plan ever left the CAD room until I had personally reviewed and signed off on the content. Right? And again, I wasn't reviewing the design intent. Right? That's the engineers, the PE's job. Right? But I was reviewing the readability, the consistency, the accuracy of all the construction information. And, let's face it, a little bit of the design intent too. Let's face it, even engineers make dumb mistakes some days. So it's always nice when you can catch those. So, Tony, where do you think companies can have the most impact in trying to resolve these issues? Is it in their standards, the training, quality control, or general management attitudes towards those things?
I think a little bit of everything. Standards, definitely standards. You gotta have standards. It's I deal mostly with civil, so I'm dealing with Civil 3D. That program requires standards. If you're not using them, then just what are you doing? You have to. And I think part of it, maybe you gave me an idea. Maybe it's not just maybe it's standards training, so that they can understand what standards are and how they want things to look and how they want things to play out. Whenever I'm setting somebody up, I make it a point to let them know, look, I'm not coming in here and just setting everything up for you. You have to answer my questions. How do you want this to look? How do you want this to play out? You have to understand your standards in order to get to what you want. Because a lot of what happens is, you have one guy, he wants to look one way. You have another guy, he wants to look another way. I can't do that. You guys have to come to some sort of consensus. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting you brought it up, because it's almost like you got to train them how to set up standards, even though, we're doing the software part of the standardization. But for the final product, which is, today's, discussion, they have the say in that. And I want them to understand that, look, you have the power to make it all work. How do you want to set this up? And it's going to totally behoove you to do this and take the time to set this stuff up, because now you're going to have an answer. Now, when you produce these plans, you produce this design, there's a workflow, there's a process, and you can train the interns, you can train the people coming in, this is how we do it, go this way, and now we're going to start to see conformity and uniformity in the product, and we're going to, in the consistency, and you're going to waste time with the ugly drawing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you're dead on,
and
too.
The big, and it's just, and you said it earlier, Jim, it's just like how, the biggest crux, the biggest roadblock is how do you get the bean counters to understand that and agree to it.
Absolutely. And so it always makes me laugh, right? Whenever we do consulting, because we do a lot of that too right here at Center. We're forever, working with people for, set up CAD standards and so on. And the first part of every one of our consultations isn't, about the software. It's about what are your current standards. We always have at least a 2-hour meeting up front where we're like, okay, show me what you do today. Give me examples of the drawings you printed out that you like. Show me what your company standards are. Like, why do we need to do this? Can't you just do it all? No, I need to know what your presentation standards are and should be in order to build standards that are going to, equal that. So it always blows people's mind when we insist on that.
It's like I can go in and say, hey, I'll do it. I'll put up everything, but it's going to be my standards. You want my standards or do you want yours?
Yeah, exactly. And every, like you said, every engineer, every designer is going to want things to show the way they need them shown. And that's okay. Just tell me what that is, and we're going to make sure that every drawing you ever do is going to look that way.
Yeah. And it's fun to throw it back at them, because one engineer will say, I want this tech site. The other one says, I want this tech site. And it's like, okay, you guys, we'll put you in a room and fight it out,
There you go.
There was that classic CAD cartoon. Remember the old Catalyst magazine? Mm-hmm. They had the CAD cartoon. And it was the two guys in the meeting room meeting with the project manager or the company head, and both of the guys were in bandages, slings, full body casts, and they're like, okay, I think we've come to an agreement on our CAD standard.
There you go. That's exactly how it works.
That was the caption. You probably remember that one, Rocco. That one goes way back.
Good stuff. So all right, folks. So at the end of the day, I do think that professionalism in your output matters. It matters for our personal satisfaction, our career growth. It matters for the profitability of the company that we work for, and the safety of the public. If you're listening and you want to discount this conversation we had here today as just a bunch of grumpy old men complaining, I think it's a danger to everyone involved in this industry, and discounting the problem on the other side is just, it's a bunch of lazy kids who don't want to work, is dismissive. And we've already proven, right, for this, at the end of the day, it's just not true. That's not the problem, right? Workers follow management's lead, right? And they do what they're told to do and what they're taught to do, even if they disagree with it. And if they don't, well, they're fired, all right? So, I believe that the onus here really has to lie, in the end, at management's feet to understand the damage they're causing by not providing the time, the training, and the support, right, that's needed to generate quality output. And that goes to the benefit of the entire company and the industry as a whole. So, all right. So Tony, any last thoughts you want to throw in here on this topic, that I missed, that you want to touch base before we wrap it up?
Yeah, just I think these are solvable issues. They can be solved. I do a lot of what they call onboard training, and managers like, give them a couple hours, 2 or 3 hours, and CAD training. And in their minds, that means I'm going to show them the program. Here's how you draw a line. Here's how you move, copy, rotate. But now I'm finding okay, they can pick up on that pretty good. It's pretty straightforward. These kids are really smart. This generation with the computers, they're good. But now it's what we're talking about today. Now I find myself going, okay, wait a minute. Yeah, you can do that really quick, but what are you doing? So now part of that onboard training is now actually teaching them how to draft, for lack of a better term. It's like what a drawing is supposed to look like. Here's the detail. What's this supposed to look like? Look, you got to, move the annotation around so it's legible, and don't have crossing, leader lines. They don't know that.
Oh,
I mean, that's like, we don't even think
it's
about
like
that.
nails on a chalkboard. Oh my God.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
awful.
and it's like, this is the kind of stuff. And listen, the kids is great. They pick it up. This is a solvable problem. But let's go back to what you're talking about. The people who make the decisions and the people who are signing the checks, they have to realize this problem exists, and they have to realize that we're going to need more time for these people. We're going to have to take out a little bit more time, and it's totally going to benefit you on the back end.
Absolutely.
Totally going to benefit you on the back end. If we teach them correctly, then it's just, I don't know, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. And not just our industry, every industry. Rocco talked about it earlier. It's just across the board, just more education up front, teaching them the right way, and that will trickle down. If you get 2 or 3 kids in the room and they know how to do it correctly, and the other people who are still learning, now they can disseminate that knowledge out there, and it's just going to go better. And then it's just the better product, the better flow. So I'm afraid it's education. It always comes down to education. In
all things in life, it's always about education. That's the fact.
And we got to get the people who making decisions to value education.
Absolutely. All right, so I think we'll leave it off there for today. So thanks for listening in, folks. And most especially, I want to thank Tony Gaffney from Pinnacle Consulting for being here to give us all his insights. So, Tony, as always, man, it's a pleasure to have you on, and thanks so much for agreeing to do this with us.
Thanks, guys. It's always good to check in. It's always good to be on here and talking the talk.
Outstanding. All right, folks, we're out of here. We're going to catch you next time on the Cattle Call Podcast. All right, everybody. Today's Cattle Call was brought to you courtesy of Zentech Consultants. That's Rocco and I. Zentech Consultants works with design and manufacturing firms to help our clients purchase and implement the software that they need in these complex industries. We provide a single point of contact for clients to buy, develop, and learn the most vital software systems for your specific needs. Zentech strives to be your trusted technology partner from your initial needs all the way through long-term support and training for your entire staff. So Rocco, why don't you tell them how to reach out to Zentech?
All right, yeah, you can reach out to us through zentechconsultants.net. You can email us at sales@zentechconsultants.net, or you can even call us 866-824-4459.
Excellent. We look forward to hearing from you all.